Hey everyone, this is Louis7, and today I have my Update 29 Wildwood review for the Lord of the Rings Online, which, as you can see from the title, I think it is wildly fun, but importantly there are still a few not so good parts that we will have to cover as well. But for the structure of this video, I will first talk about the zone and the questing experience along with the missions there, then we'll shift to the instances that came with Wildwood, and then I'll talk about the Spring Festival because there were a lot of new additions with Wildwood in that as well. And then I will summarize what I like and don't like about the zone to have a summary there. And then finally, after all of that, I will end with how Wildwood has been different from the War of Three Peaks, because in my review with War of Three Peaks, there were a lot of negative issues going on with that update that were unrelated to the content, so we'll see if any of that stuff improved. So the very first thing to cover is the level for Wildwood, which is 45. Now, I think it's very exciting to have a new update, a new zone that is below the level cap, especially at the level of 45. It's going to be in Eriador, and I really like that level range, the low level content in LOTRO. So having a new zone to level in Alton, I think is very exciting and is a good thing. I had a ton of fun going through it on my Hunter, of course, who I prepared specifically to be on level with this update. So just having another option for any leveling character, I think is great with that, but I will say there are some negatives going on with it being specifically at level 45 because there are a lot of other zones already in LOTRO that cover this level range. It's very saturated as far as content options for this level compared to many of the other level ranges in LOTRO. This is just already has the most zones to actually do. So there are 4 other zones that are around level 45. They're not going to be exactly with level 45, but around it. So first we have Misty Mountains, which I will say is generally below level 45. This would be about 40 to 45, so it could actually take you nicely into Wildwood to be on level, get an on-level experience there. The next one is Forakel, which probably starts a little bit below level 45, maybe 44 is where the first quests begin, if I remember correctly, and that goes up to a little bit before level 50 at the end of that, so that covers the same range around what Wildwood does. And then there's Angmar. This zone is pretty big and it covers about 40 to 50, so it covers the entire level range of Wildwood. I know not many players are a big fan of Angmar. Some people really like it. I do enjoy Angmar personally, but also with Angmar there's a lot of group content above level 45. And then other than Angmar, we have Eregion, which is more in the upper range for the 40s. It goes up to Moria and starts maybe roughly level 47 if I remember correctly with that one. Again, I probably should have checked the exact levels of these. I just think if Wildwood were perhaps at a different specific level, it could be a little bit more appealing as far as leveling alts and not having too many different options that you already have at level 45 to level characters in. Overall, I do want to summarize this by still saying I think it's exciting and fun to have a zone that is below the level cap in just any level range to have an alternative for leveling there, and Wildwood is good with that, can take you up nicely to Moria, and is an alternative to a lot of zones I know different players maybe dislike, kind of like Ingmar, just one alternative there. But also with the instances, I do want to point out, I know we're not really there yet, but talking about levels, I will say the minimum levels as far as the new Wildwood instances go, Woe of the Will and Agoroth the Narrow Delve, the minimum level for those makes sense. Woe being level 20 minimum, it's in Old Forest, and then Agoroth is 45, it goes after the Forakel book quest, so that's the minimum level you can do the Forakel book quest, and that all makes sense and is about the level of the actual Forakel zone. But moving on to get more into the content of Wildwood as far as the zone itself goes, I believe it is a very fun zone to quest in. It's wildly fun, as the title says. I do believe there is one significant negative part, which is the reputation gating of quests. So while I think overall the questing experience is very fun in Wildwood, having quests and the storyline part of the quests gated by reputation I do not believe is a good thing. This is especially bad for players who maybe want a smooth experience just to go through, get the story, and not either have to grind dailies or actually purchase reputation accelerator tomes either from the skirmish camp, but if they're mostly a solo player and don't have the marks and medallions for the rep accelerators, that would be from the LOTRO store. So it almost seems like it is a little bit of a cash grabby type thing. I don't think it's necessarily that or intended to be that way, but it can almost feel like that, I think, to some players having the main story content in the zone gated behind reputation tiers. And as you can probably get an idea from what I am talking about, you will not get enough reputation just by regular questing without repeating the dailies a bunch of times to actually get enough reputation with the two factions to continue the storyline, as a smooth experience again without using accelerators. So that I don't think is a good thing. Also, just reputation gating of quests in general, I do not really believe is a good thing. That is probably a topic best saved for another video. And just in summary, for this specific zone, I don't like the rep gating. But again, setting that aside with the actual content with the quest, I have once again found that to be wildly fun on my hunter. And I really like the questing style. Basically, every square inch, it seems like, of the zone is utilized by some sort of quest, whether it's just killing something, picking up things, interacting with objects, doing fetch type quests. There's all sorts of things to do in every single place of the zone, it feels like. So it's very utilized. While it's a relatively small zone overall, there are just so many things to do. And going through it on my hunter, I could just like run around, and eventually I would do a bunch of things after running around for a while, just like randomly doing stuff. So I found that very fun, and that is how it is wild, because it's so densely packed with so many different things, so many different enemies, so many different quests, so many different objects, so many things like that, and it really is wild. I will say that may not be a questing experience that everybody enjoys, but again, for me, that is a very fun questing experience. And then also with the quests, they were blended very well with Eriador. And I really like Eriador. This is a video I've been thinking about doing called like the Eriador Sandbox, is what I kind of like to call it, because it is kind of like in Wildwood, you can carve your own path to go through the zone. You don't have to necessarily follow something very linear like a lot of other zones in LOTRO, especially higher level zones. There's usually a very linear path that you go through. The questing, you go one camp to another and so on. This, you can just explore the zone as you wish, and you have so many different things to do. You can do it the way you want, in the order that you want, as you go through it. And I think that blends very well with the Eriador style of questing in general, that you can just go about it how you want and carve your own path. And I am very happy that it actually blends in with the type of questing that I personally love in Eriador. That's one reason I love low-level content, is because I have a ton of fun with the quest style that is present in Eriador. And I think this blends in well with that, even though it brings in a lot of new stuff, and it is actually different from some of the other zones. It brings in new stuff. Some of the questing style we see in like Mordor Besieged, with when you go to a camp, you get new quests to actually do stuff in that camp, just a little bit of boost XP and daily and rewards with that type of stuff. But it is overall very fun to me with that style, and I think it blends in well with Eriador. I do have one complaint though with the zone. This is a pretty big one, so get ready. They decided to tuck in a very small portion of the zone that I saw, some of the very ugly bushes. And these are the ugly bushes that are seen in many high-level areas in Middle Earth and LOTRO. And when I came across these bushes, that was way more shutter-worthy than like the gooey spiders we actually see in the Rhythm Set cave. So that was a very bad part of the zone. But setting that aside, you can probably tell I like the quests themselves a lot, but what we actually need to also go in with for that, what makes a good questing experience, is the zone itself. And by that, I mean the environment and landscape carved by the zone. And that actually is a very important part for the questing experience again. Everything feels wild there as far as the environment goes, which is very good. And there's a lot of variation there with that. There are some more open areas and open fields. There's some more densely packed forests and the enemy camps, the structures, all that type of stuff, I think fits in very well and creates a good wild environment for this wild questing style. Also, like with the questing blending in with Eriador in general, the Wildwood blends in with the other zones that it neighbors. So you have, of course, it's in the northwest part of Breeland Wildwood, so it has a lot of breathing things going on, but it also neighbors North Downs to the north, and it has some of the North Downs style bleeding in that I think does a good job with that. There's even some Ebendom influences to the zone, which is nice, and there are even Shire, which I thought was a little bit more surprising, but it makes sense. Wildwood is also right next to the Shire, and you see some of the trees and landscape styles, especially on the Shire side of the zone, bleed in. So I think a lot of that is very nice to see some connectedness to some previous zones that were done a long time ago in LOTRO. So it was nice to see something. They were able to make something that actually matches that style, I think. So there is one final factor I have that plays into the immersion with the zone, and that is going to be the deeds with Wildwood. So Wildwood offers many various and kind of typical deeds, and they of course reward virtue XP, which is very nice too. Maybe less than that, grind a little bit, or just give another resource for virtues. But I think there are some really fun deeds actually in the zone, and I admit some of them can take a while, which can be a negative thing. Like there's a slaying 600 big game animals, but that exact deed is like super thematic to the zone with how wild Wildwood is with these big game animals. And I just overall am a fan of the theme of the deeds we have. I think some people will find the deeds grindy, and I definitely would, especially if I was looking for the virtue XP specifically on like certain characters or level cap characters coming back to the zone just for virtue XP. I would definitely find that grindy. But as leveling an alt, just getting the experience going through the zone on a journey on an alt, I feel like the deeds actually add to the fun even with how many things you have to kill for them. Okay, so for the final part of this very long section on the questing in the zone in general, I want to talk about the missions. And one of the big things with the missions is they are longer than the War of Three Peaks missions. There's a little bit more to them, they're a little bit more involved, and I think that's overall a good thing. I will say if you're just looking to complete missions weekly, it probably won't be the best for you. But one thing I've actually been very surprised with the missions is they offer a lot of replayability. I thought because they were longer, there's a lot of like click 20 things type missions that do take quite a while to do that. I thought I would actually get bored of them after repeating them a few times, but that has not actually happened yet. So they are overall very fun missions to me. There's also some variations. There are some skirmish-like missions, some like offensive skirmish, some defensive skirmish-like missions. So that's pretty neat. And one of the big things I also like is the rewards from the missions. So in War of Three Peaks, the biggest gating for the rewards was reputation rather than the barter currency. You would actually cap on the barter currency before you got enough reputation to barter for anything, which doesn't make sense how that worked, but that is done with War of Three Peaks, and in Wildwood you don't need the reputation again. All you have to worry about is getting the currency from running the missions. You have a weekly quest to do 10 missions, that'll give you some of the currency, and just every day, every time you do a mission, you'll get the currency. So I also really like the rewards to barter from, so that's exciting, but the way the reward system is set up, I really like that. So overall, I just have a lot of positive things to say about the missions. Alright, we can go ahead and move on to the next big section for this video, which is on the new instances. So with the new instances, I already mentioned how the level integration with them is well done. So Woe of the Willow is the Old Forest instance, and you can do that level 20 to 130, it scales to the cap. And the, again, Agoroth and Narrow Delve, that will be 45 to the cap, that is in 4 so it makes sense with those levels and how they fit into the game. This was a big concern of mine before the update, that this somehow would not be properly implemented with the instances, but it's almost like these instances could have been released with the base game when these zones were added. Now there is one odd thing. They are listed in the War of Three Peaks part of the instance panel, which makes no sense. It will make people think they need War of Three Peaks to run the instances when they do not, and it will make people think that they are related to War of Three Peaks, which they are not. They're also not even related to Wildwood. They're just new instances set throughout Eriador. And that part, it just doesn't make sense why they're listed in War of Three Peaks. I feel like they should either be listed in like an Eriador type part of the instance panel, or just like there's an other section that they could put them in. So that is a little bit weird, I will say. But to go back to actually how they fit in, I think the rewards, as far as the instances go, they seem okay for leveling characters. And I will say the level 100 rewards aren't really all that great. The gear is just unfortunately not that good for level 100, and that's a big thing for me since I play mostly on Anora lately. And with that, I don't have the full experience with the level 130 loot. Unfortunately for this review, I just cannot quite comment on that. But just in summary with these instances, with the loot, I think it is great to have leveling instances with the properly scaling loot system. And if you don't like the loot, you can actually disenchant it into crafting match. In the crafting mats, you can actually select which tier you want, so you could maybe save for the future if you want high tier crafting mats, or you could get something you need right now to help out your crafting at the moment. So a lot of great things, I think, with the rewards as far as how it's integrated. And I go on so long about it in this review just because, again, that was a big concern going into the update for me, and I'm very happy with how it turned out with the integration of the instances being the level that they are and how they scale to the level cap, and being able to run tier 2 and tier 3 at 130 for end-game rewards. Having said all that with the instances, I do have one big negative part to cover with the Agoroth and Narrow Delve. So that is the 3-man version for that instance requires 3 people to do. To start the last boss fight, you must have 3 players stand in like the 3 beams of light. So if a group of 1 or 2 players tries that, the final boss fight will just never start. And that honestly is frustrating. Even though you can run the instant solo or duo if you have a group that size, you get the best rewards for running the 3-man version, and overall the instance is easy enough to actually run the 3-man version with fewer than 3 players. So it would be nice if you could actually start that last boss fight with fewer than 3 players. Basically, that is my biggest complaint as far as the instances go. But moving on, I want to shift to the 3rd major section for this video, and this one is on the Spring Festival again, or more specifically, what Update 29 Wildwood brings to the Spring Festival. And aside from the usual yearly stuff we get in festivals, we got a new boss from the vaults that's Naruhel the Red Maid, and a new festivity instance called Bee's Big Business. So Naruhel so far has been a very fun experience for me, and it's been very challenging for my kin to get through, so that's made it feel very satisfying when we actually get it completed. The mechanics of it are a little bit interesting, and it requires some strategy and good planning and just good actual playing and executing your characters and your strategy in the game. So I find the challenge there very fun, especially increasing up to tier 3. That's where the big challenge is. Tier 1 is super easy. That is, I was able to duo it with not even the best setup to duo it on. So tier 1 is super easy. Tier 2 is like a medium difficulty. I really like how it scales up with the difficulty to tier 2 even. It's kind of like a warm-up, and then tier 3 is where the real challenge is, and you have to very seriously deal with the mechanics a lot more then. So the content of the new boss from the vaults, Naruhel the Red Maid, is good, but one thing I don't like, this is true for limited time events in general, not just specifically the Wildwood edition of Naruhel to the Spring Festival. I do not like best in slot items for limited time events. I will say I am not 100% sure if the level 130 version of the new cloak, which is what you get in Naruhel, it's a gold cloak, I don't know if that's best in slot for level 130. But just in general, thinking about best in slot gear coming from limited time events. So if you miss out on that limited time event, that is just going to be bad feeling for you if you missed out on it and couldn't get the best in slot item, especially if you're a dedicated raider and just either not happen to play then, or just even worse, maybe just didn't have the time to actually grind for it. You had the time to play and maybe try it out, but you just weren't able to run it enough in the limited time to actually get something. I don't think that is a good system, and I think that whole thing needs a restructure for the rewards, and maybe that's something to say for another video because it's not really specifically with Update 29 Wildwood, but it is a problem in Naruhel the Red Maid that there is potentially a very good item, even if it's not necessarily best in slot, that comes from this festival instance, the Naruhel boss from the vaults. But anyway, we can go ahead and shift to Bee's Big Business, which is, I don't really have too much to say about it or comparing it to other festivity instances. In my experience, this is my favorite seasonal festivity instance, and I enjoy it. So moving on from that, we have finally made it through all the major parts of Update 29 after this very long time. But the major parts with Update 29 Wildwood, I went into a lot of detail with everything there, and I do want to quickly summarize what I both like and dislike with the update. Alright, so first off, let's cover my likes for the update. I like the Wildwood of Wildwood Zone, the questing experience, the immersion, and just how thematically wild Wildwood is. And then within Wildwood, I am also a big fan of the dynamic spawns, and I do enjoy the rhythm set cave system, especially in how that works. And then next, I love the integration of the instances, and I do think the instances are fun even if they are relatively short overall. And speaking of the integration, I also like how the Wildwood Zone is integrated into the northwest corner of Breeland, of course with the influences from the surrounding zones, and how it also blends in with the actual Breeland environment. I also do enjoy the new instances both with Naruhel and the Bee's Big Business that were added in Wildwood. And at the end of my list here, I really do enjoy the missions, and just surprisingly, as I mentioned, they have a lot of replayability to me, which I did not expect after the first day, even though I enjoyed them. So yeah, that is my short summary of my likes, but for my dislikes, number one dislike is the tiny corner I saw of the ugly bushes. But other than that, I don't like how in Agoroth the Narrow Delve, the 3-man version requires 3 people to do the last boss, as we mentioned. But more seriously, actually getting into the content with Wildwood, perhaps my biggest serious dislike is how the main storyline of the zone is reputation gated, and as discussed, I just don't think that is a good system for how the zone progresses. And the final thing here is I don't like that the missions currency is not account bound. There's a lot of things to like with the missions not being rep gated with the rewards, but I wish the missions currency was account bound overall, and I think that would be a much better system. But at the end of my dislikes here, I do want to make some suggestions for improvement. So number one is remove the reputation gating and just make it as you go through the story, it just progresses without reputation gating. I feel like that would be an easy fix for that. The second thing I would offer is in Agoroth and Arrow Delve, if you have a group of 2 or 1 running the 3-man version of that, you only need 1 or 2 people, whatever it is in your group, to actually stand in the gold circles to actually trigger the last boss. And then as we just discussed with the missions currency, I feel like that could be made account bound. And then of course, perhaps the biggest improvement that could be made is to just remove the ugly bushes, and while they're at it, if they remove the ugly bushes from Wildwood, they might as well remove the ugly bushes from everywhere else in Middle-earth. It would be a much more beautiful place if they did that. But getting back to topic here, the list of dislikes is honestly pretty short for me overall. I think that actually shows how I overall feel about the zone, with liking it, again being the title is wildly fun. But it's just a few issues that are there, and the issues that are there I think are overall pretty big issues, and that is kind of the main negative thing going on here. A few big issues rather than a bunch of little ones. But we can finally get to the last section of this video, which is on how I think Update 29 did compared to Update 28 and all the issues I put in my review for Update 28. So for anybody unfamiliar with Update 28, War of Three Peaks, that was a mini expansion. And for a full list of issues, I would direct you to my review actually on that. But one very big issue that was ongoing throughout the entirety of that update cycle was lack of communication and information given on the mini expansion from Standing Stone Games. So with Update 29, first of all, Standing Stone Games gave a lot more communication just about the update in general. We even got a stream from one of the world builder scenario about going through Wildwood and some of the behind the scenes with how it was built, so that was very nice. We even got the Q&A session from the executive producer, Severlin, on just talking about anything basically that came up during the stream, at least that they could answer and had time to answer. There were so many questions going on in that. But anyway, just that type of communication, those two big things made a big improvement compared to the stuff we did not see in War of Three Peaks. Even on the forums, there was a lot of chatter from developers, relatively a lot of chatter, not all that much to be honest, but there was still a lot more compared to what we got in Update 28 and even throughout the 2020 year in general. So the step up in communication actually interacting with the player base, I feel like was greatly improved with Update 29 Wildwood compared to Update 28 War of Three Peaks. So that was very nice to see, and hopefully that trend continues throughout the rest of 2021 and future updates coming in the year, and of course beyond. That would also be nice to have increased communication ongoing with that. But that is finally all I have for my Update 29 Wildwood critical review in the Lord of the Rings Online. I will point out this video, you all might have been able to tell, was a little bit different structure. I'm trying a little bit different style with my review video here to maybe save me a little bit time in the preparation phase. So let me know if I got a little bit too rambly, too off topic in points, just that is just a concern I have with this video. So if you have a critical review of the video, you could comment down below. Definitely would appreciate that. Because of the new style. But anyway, to summarize my thoughts very briefly on Update 29 Wildwood, it is a wildly fun update for me, and I am very happy with it, as you can probably tell. The content and just going on the experience of a Wildwood journey, and that was super fun with me in the new Wildwood Zone specifically. And overall, again, I don't have too many things to complain about, but it's just a couple bigger issues that I think could really have you been gone through differently, or just could be improved upon, maybe even patched in the future. I think that would make Wildwood even better than it is. But thinking about some other players, I think one of the bigger issues I can actually see from them, maybe people that don't enjoy the questing style or don't have alts that could actually go through that, is maybe if you were hoping for new content to do on level and you didn't actually prepare an alt, or maybe you're somebody who only likes to play one character and they're at very high level and you just like to get a full experience on that character, having a new low level zone may not be the best thing, as in it might be hard for you to get like the fulfilling experience or fully immersive experience as I did, so I could see that maybe not being as well received of an update for a player like that. But overall, I think the zone will be great for players that do want to bring new alts up actually into that level range and have just a different leveling zone to try out. That's what I did basically on my hunter, and I really enjoyed that. But that is all I have for this video. Please do again comment your thoughts both on Update 29 Wildwood, and if you have any feedback on this video considering the slightly new format, at least for my end new format. And if you did enjoy this video or perhaps learn something useful from it about Wildwood, please consider liking and subscribing for more or becoming a channel member to support the content, and thanks for watching everyone.